Start module 4. Two topics in this module. First one, expression language. Second one, JSP standard tag libraries. And usually we call JSTL, right? JSP standard tag libraries. Yeah. Part A, introduction to expression language. 8.1, first view of expression language, EL. Usually people call EL, right? So when you see EL, very likely they refer to this technology. All right, so let's start. Actually, I already showed you a little bit in my previous lecture. I use one example in EL. Here, we will spend more time to study the whole theory. I plan to use 2 lectures, today and next time, Wednesday. Today, actually, I just give you a short introduction. On Wednesday, we will complete it. Yeah. Because today, I have another important topic I want to explain. Yeah. All right. So only 8.1. Yeah. So we have a short introduction, first view of expression language. All right. First, the goal to use this technology. Look at this title. Expression language makes it simple. We want to present our data in a simple way. Because in our JSP, we need to frequently retrieve and display certain data pieces. We want to have a fast, simple way to display. We don't want to do a lot of work, although we can do that. But the way to do a lot of preparation. So usually so think about the typical procedure to present certain data. Typically, we need to do some preparation, right? You need to retrieve data first, right? After you retrieve data, you need to do some basic checking, right? Think about that, basic checking. Now, why you need to do checking? Because if the data is not available, can you display it? You need to check if the data is available or not. After that, then you can display the data. And when you display data, you need to think about how to display the right piece in certain data structure, right? Still a lot of work. Still a lot of work. Because usually your data is organized in certain data structure. You need to get into that data structure to display appropriate piece. That's the typical way we display data. But that kind of procedure, so many things you need to do, we like to use a extremely simple and a fast way to do it. All right, quickly jump into the right piece and display. Skipping a lot of routine steps. Routine steps. That's the basic idea behind this display technology, expression language, EL. Okay, all right, so let's continue. The format of EL expressions. You saw it last time, but here let me just repeat it, the format. EL expressions are always within curly braces and prefixed with the $sign. Yeah, so that kind of, remember, Unix style, right? Yeah, so if you're familiar with that Unix background, you can, get used to this kind of expressions easily. Yeah, let me show you first example. All right. Still, this one I used before last time. Dollar, a pair of curly braces, then person dot name. Two pieces, person, then dot operator, then name. Person, we know, if you can remember the example we used the last time, that person is reference of a JSP bin. Okay, so this person, if we recall from our previous lecture, that is the reference of a JSP being. Right? Yes. Usually a Java being, but not necessarily 100% pure Java being. All right? Yeah. So that's our discussion last time. All right. Person dot name. That name, the property of that being. Property. Name property. Okay. Then we know the JSP container knows how to call the getter for this name property to retrieve the data in the display. That's simple. Right? Yeah. So this is the, simple example. Yeah. All right. Explanation. The first name the parameter. Person, the first name the parameter in the expression is either an explicit object, explicit object, right? Yeah. Or an attribute. The attribute, so what is attribute? Right? Yeah. Here, I need to recall the last time I did some example when I talk about JSP scopes. Full scopes, right? Then I also talk about how to store and retrieve data in some of the scopes. Yeah. Here I like to use two examples: request scope and a session scope. All right. Then remember, we can set data when we need to store data in a request scope. We call set attribute. Then name, then value, right? Some object as value, object one, for example, set attribute name one here, all right? Name two, object two, all right? Yeah. So here we store some object data in different scopes. Most of the time, we use request scope and a session scope. All right. Yeah. Other scopes we may use sometimes, but pretty rare. All right. Pretty rare. All right. These two most frequently used scopes, request and a session. All right. Most frequently used scopes. All right. Okay. Now here, when we talk about an attribute, we refer to the object stored in that way. All right. Yeah. So then you can connect. What do you mean the attribute? Yeah. From these places. Okay. Those places. All right. But there is one case missing. How about a bin reference? Because here we just said either an implicit object or an attribute. We didn't talk about the being reference, right? Here, the being reference. But remember, this example comes from the being reference, all right? So that means we should add this case to the list, being reference. Because being reference is different from implicit object. Being reference is different from attribute. Any attribute way. All right? Yep. Okay. Yeah, probably. Yeah, there is a possibility. Yeah, there is a possibility, you know. People may treat that being referenced as a special case for the attribute. There is a possibility, all right? Yeah, yeah, that could happen, but at least the creation procedure is different. For us, we as Java programmers, when we create a being reference, the way we do it is quite different to the way we store object as an attribute, right? Yes, yeah. So for that reason, we can, you know, think about that. So we should not forget that being reference case. All right. Then we should cover all the possibilities. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that is the first form, but there is another version, newer version of EL. It is an improved version. Later, you know, the designers, the creators, technology creators, those people notice there are some problems. Still, something not quite convenient. So they want to find a way to fix those problems. So they modify and improve and make this newer version that is better, although not as popular as the first version. The first using a dot operator, that version is the most popular version. The second version, relatively newer version, more powerful, but less popular. Less popular. Yeah. So let me give you the second version. Sometimes you need to use the second version. All right. So what's that? A variable followed by a bracket in an EL expression. We do not use dot operator. We use the bracket operator. That's the main difference. Bracket. A pair of brackets, square brackets. That notation also EL. Also EL. And let me show you the example, typical example like this. Still the same example, but this time we represent it as bracket form. Dollar, a pair of curly braces, person. After that, a pair of square brackets. Then inside it, double quotes, the name of the property. The name of the property. All right. So this newer form can help us to do little more than the older version. A little more. Here, I just give you one simple case. Later, we will learn several other cases. Okay? Yeah. All right. First one of the obvious case that this version can do, but older version cannot do is it allows a space character in that double quotes name, inside the double quotes. You write the name of your property, name of the property. Yeah, but name of the property, and that may not be the property. Remember, that could be the name of the attribute, right? Yeah. So here, because think about these possibilities. when we talk about the name, we have three possibilities, right? Yeah. First, implicit objects. All right, yeah. Second, attributes. Third, being references. These three cases. First, implicit object, no space, right? There is no space we need to consider. All right. Attributes, names, attribute names, possible. All right, yeah, possible. And being references, no, right? No space. How can you create a being reference with space, right? That won't be good, all right? You will break the code. You will break the code, all right? So the first and the third, those two cases, you will break the code, all right? Yeah. But the attributes, when you put a space, leave a space character in the name, that's okay, right? Double quotes, something containing a space character. That's legal, okay? We can test it, that's legal. All right, so that means there is a possibility here in that double quotes around name, there is a possibility that could contain a space character. All right, then if you go back to the first version, dot operator, can you use a space? You cannot, right? Dot, then attribute names, but you have a space there. So it won't work. Think about that, right? So this is one of the situations. The newer version can do a little more. And there are some more other cases, 3 or 4 other special cases. We will learn later. In our part B, we will learn those cases, at least 3 or 4 different cases. All right, okay. But later, people, Java programmers, after they learn those cases, if you do not have those special cases, people tend to use the first version because they feel in their mind, they feel the first version simpler. All right, so they like to use the dot operator. Okay, most people like to use the dot operator. Yeah, that's the reason currently we see most of the time people use the dot operator way for that EL expressions. Yeah. All right, yeah. So that's the, all right, yeah. Okay, yeah. So then design goal and the priority of scopes, a little more properties and explanations. First, the design goal of this technology. EL is not designed to replace Java. Java code in JSP, yeah. So that's not the purpose. Yeah. Still, we know EL, that is, remember, for data display purpose. A portion of the Java functionality can be replaced by EL. Okay? Data display part. All right. Instead, it is designed to provide you with the tools you need to create JSPs without Java Or we say in this way, minimize Java. How about that? Reduce Java code. Reduce Java code. In JSP. That's the purpose. Okay? Or that is one of the purpose. Reduce Java code. Another one, as I explained before, improve the productivity. You can do the same thing faster and more reliable. Reliability. Reliability means handling error situations. Error situations. Yep. To make your code robust, right? To make your code robust, then you need to deal with many possibilities for various errors, right? Yeah. You need to check several things before you can display the data. For example, the null pointer, right? Null pointer, you need to check. Okay? When you retrieve object, you need to check if your object is null or not, right? So it's a lot of things you need to do checking. Okay? Yeah. If you do not check, your code may break when there is no object encountered, right? It will break. But with EL, the technology helps us to get around. We do not need to do checking, all right? It won't break. It won't break. Even in the no object situation, it won't break, all right? We will get there. We will get there. Here, I just talk about the idea. Later, we will be there. You will get a concrete example for the understanding. All right, yeah, design goal. Yeah. Priority of various scopes. Now we need to think about retrieving data using the EL expressions, because the EL expression is very simple. Very simple. It means we have no chance to specify which scope we want to retrieve the data, right? Yeah. How do you specify the scope part? We have 4 different scopes: page, request, session, and application in a JSP. But when you retrieve data, you retrieve data from which of the 4 scopes? You have no chance to choose it. No chance to choose it. We need to follow some rule. Yeah, here the rule is priority rule. Yeah. Preference priority rule. Yeah, in this way. The EL engine. Here we assume the tool that process EL, the EL engine. So we use this term to refer the processing tool, EL engine. Looks for implicitly scoped variables. Yeah. Implicit object, implicit scoped variables first in the page scope. Yeah. Page scope has the highest priority. For example, when you specify some data piece using certain name, it will first go to the page scope to see if there is a data piece with that name. All right. If it couldn't find it, then move to the next one, request scope. Can you find one with that name in the request scope? If yes, just grab it and put there, right? It's done. If not, go to the next one, session scope. And then finally, application scope. After that, if still missing, then treat it as no such data. Yeah. No such data. If there is no data found, what is the behavior? We will talk about that. We will talk about the cases when there is no data specified that could be found. The reason is because we will do quite some discussion. The behavior could be different. So that's the complex part. The behavior could be different. Sometimes you have error, complaints. Sometimes you do not have complaints. So that's why we need to really study those detailed cases. Yeah. All right. No public field access. Using the EL expressions, you cannot access public field. No public field access. All right. Yeah. Yeah. The reason is simple, because using EL, we can only call getters, not setters. Because when we display data, we call that getters, right? Yeah, we do not call setters to retrieve data. So typically we use getters. Then we will not touch the public fields. Yeah. All right. So that's the, yeah. So you cannot access public fields from EL expressions. Yeah. All right. So that's our first view part. Okay. These two slides give you some short introduction, simple background. Yeah. And we will have a lot more, yeah, to learn next time. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. So I just stop our discussion here. Then I move to the next topic. Yeah, the reason I want to jump to this topic, because it is closely related to our homework assignment number 1. I just give you at the weekend homework assignment 1 with 25 questions. Some of you may have noticed that, right? Yeah. So the deadline is next week, Thursday. Thursday, next week. More than 1 week. You can, try to complete it. 25 questions. You really need to study our materials well. Otherwise, you may miss many questions. Yeah. You need to really do some deep study. Okay. Yeah. Deep study, deep understanding, relatively deep understanding. Okay. And in that assignment, as I remember, my impression, I didn't count accurately, but based on my impression, I may give you 5 or 6 questions related to this topic. Yeah, approximately 5 to 6 questions related to this concept, redirect and forward. So I plan to use the remaining part of this lecture to talk about this topic. Forward and redirect, what's the main difference? I also include a simple example to show you the difference. So I upload the zip file under Module 4, Part A. Module 4, Part A. Forward, redirect. All right. Here, let me explain and compare these two concepts. Servlet redirect. We do redirect in a servlet. We can also do it in JSP, but here I talk about in servlet. After that, sometime I will show you how to do it in JSP. In a similar way, yeah. All right. The same redirect method of HTTP servlet response redirects to another URL. How do we do it? If we want to, in a servlet, after we do data processing, if you want to go to a different URL using the redirect way, you can do in this way, call send redirect method for your HTTP server response object, not request. All right. Yeah. Sometimes many students get confused using that request version. No, it's response version. All right. Yeah. So the syntax, how to do it? This is the syntax. Response dot send redirect method. Then inside the parenthesis, double quotes, you put your URL there. That's simple. Yeah, pretty simple. Yeah. Then you will see another resource will be called. All right, that's simple. Okay. Yeah. From after your servlet, you jump to a different resource. Here, I say resource that could be servlet or JSP. You go to some servlet or JSP or other resources. Yeah, because HTML, other things you can put there. All right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. But here there is some related to some further consideration related to the URL part. Two ways to put URL. Relative URL and absolute URL. All right. So relative URL, a resource in the current web application. Relative to the current location of your resource. That's in the current web application. Okay, yeah. But absolute and external web page, usually, because absolute you can also use the internal, right? Yeah, but if it's an internal, you better use here. You better, all right, external, absolute, here, an external web page, or because or an internal, it's possible, internal resource. Internal resource, sometimes we also use absolute way. Absolute. Yeah, because the internal way, start with the root. Okay, start with the root. That's absolute, right? You have a starting point, starting location. All right, so we will go there. So this part, not that easy. All right. Who does the work? Redirect work. Who does it? It happens on the client. This redirect action happens on the client. Redirect. So that's important because it will determine the behavior of redirect. Determine the behavior of the redirect. The browser starts a new request. Redirect means the server tells the browser to make a new request. That's the meaning. The server tells the browser to send a new request. Okay, yeah. The servlet ends the previous request. Ends the previous request and starts a new request. That's the meaning of redirect. So this meaning important because later we need to use these properties to understand the special behaviors. Special behaviors. Okay, yeah. All right. Conclusion. Yeah. Servlet redirect makes the browser start a new request at a new URL. This one sentence summarizes the key property for the redirect. Okay, servlet. This servlet you can change because there is a possibility we do it in JSP. Okay, so the servlet or JSP we can change. So servlet or JSP redirect makes the browser start a new request at a new URL. That's the basic meaning of redirect. But this sentence, although it is short, but it contains a lot of meanings behind it. Yeah. So we need to spend some time to understand the sentence. Yeah. Yeah. And the first thing, it contains these three properties in the sentence. Yeah. All right. Then later you will see different behaviors. All right. So that is the first concept, redirect concept. This next one, do forward in a servlet. This time we do not do redirect, we do forward. That's different. So we will compare these two. All right. Request dispatcher. This time we need to use this kind of request dispatcher concept to do forward. Okay, yeah. All right. Here we talk about servlet case, but in JSP, the forward version will be different. We will also get to the JSP forward usages. Okay, all right. The servlet uses request dispatcher object. Request dispatcher, this special object, to do the forwarding action, to dispatch the current request. Dispatch the current request. All right, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. How to do it? Yeah. Yeah. Two lines. Yeah. The first line, we need to create a request dispatcher object. Request dispatcher object, the first line. But wait, how do we create? Yeah. Because this request dispatcher, this name in Java, it is an interface. It is not a Java class, it is an interface. That means you cannot use constructor to create it. There is no constructor for it. as for an interface. You need to generate it through other objects. So here we use the request, HTTP servlet request, that object to generate, create this object. Okay, request dot get request dispatcher, then you include your resource as certain URL. Okay, URL part, yeah, point to the page or the resource you want to do forwarding. Okay, yeah. So that's the first line. Yeah. So you have this object called a view reference. The second line, then view dot forward parenthesis request comma response. You include both request and the response object for the forward action. Okay, yeah. So then you go to the next resource. From this part, they are similar. Redirect and forward similar. They both allow you to go to the next resource specified by the URL part. Okay, that's why we put them together to study and compare. Yeah. But they have big difference in their behaviors. So we will see, yeah. The servlet passes the request to a resource in the web application. Look at this part, passes the request to a resource in the web application. But here, there are some hidden meanings. So what do you mean passes request to a new resource? Some hidden meanings in this sentence. First, it happens on the server. Okay, forwarding, it happens on server, different from the redirect action, it happens on the client. It's a big difference. All right, the first one. Second, the forwarded resource stays in the same request as the server. This the key difference part. Stays in the same request. The redirect, which starts a new request. Look at that. It terminates the current redirect. It terminates the current request and it starts a new request, right? That's the redirect action. This forward action stays in the same request. It does not terminate the current. It stays in the same request. Okay, that's the key difference. All right. We will call them in the same request scope. That's the key difference part. Same request scope. When you use the forward action, you stay in the same request scope. Same redirect, you are in different request scopes. Here, the same request scopes. That's the key difference. Okay, all right. Yeah. All right, so that's the, forward action. But next, let me do comparisons. Okay, all right. All right. 8.4, compare, send, redirect, and forward. All right. Actually, in the previous two parts, 8.2 and 8.3 discussion, you can already see their differences. But here we just put them together so you can see easier. All right. Well, let us do comparisons. Implementation difference first. Redirect. Use the same redirect method of HTTP servlet response object. Okay, object. This one, it's different. Yeah. But forward, use the forward method of request dispatcher object. But this request dispatcher object, you need to use that request object to create it. Okay, yeah, yeah. To create it, request object to create it. So one response, one request. Okay, all right, yeah. Where it happens. Redirect at the client's browser to reconnect to a new URL. The action happens at the browser. Okay, yeah. Yeah. The server tells the browser to make this action. Okay, yeah. So then, when the behavior, because this property is useful when you understand the behavior, the starting point, how to start a redirect. It's important. Yeah. Forward within the web application to pass to a new resource. Forward occurs within the same web application. That means you cannot forward to a resource outside this web application. You cannot. Must be within the same web application. But redirect, it's not. You can redirect to the same resources in the same web application or external external resources. Okay, yeah. That's another different spot. Data preservation. Data preservation difference. Another important aspect. Yeah. Redirect does not preserve data in the request scope because it terminates the old request scope and start a brand new request scope. So the data stored in the old request scope is gone. Okay? When you terminate it, the data stored in the old request scope disappears. Okay? Then, because the old request scope terminates, the data occupied, the memory resource is released. Yeah. You want to save memory resource, right? So you don't want to keep all the data if you do not need them. Okay, yeah. Forward, it preserves the data in the request scope. Preserves, okay? Because it stays in the same request scope. So you can still use the data stored in the current request scope. This is the key property, key difference. When you compare these two different ways to get to the new URL resource, this part is the one of the key differences. All right. Okay. Continue. Yeah. Comparison. Yeah. URL that appears at the URL bar of the browser. Here, the behavior part. Now, what is the main difference at the behavior side? All right. Yep. URL. Let's look at the URL part. redirect, you will see a different final URL. You start a new request scope. That corresponds to a new URL. Okay? Yeah. All right. Forward, the URL of the original URL is maintained. You won't see a new URL. You see the previous URL. All right? You do not see a new URL. Okay? When you forward to a new page, you do not see the URL for that new page. You see the URL for the previous page. Why? Because you still use the request scope of the previous page, right? Yeah. So here you can see the relationship. One URL corresponds to one request scope. Okay. If you do not change the request scope, you do not change the URL. If you change a request scope, then you also change that URL. That kind of relationship. Okay. Yeah. But forward, you do not change the request scope. That's the reason you use the old URL. Okay, still old URL. Yeah. All right. Reference point for absolute URL. Now, this part is the hardest part for understanding. Hardest part for understanding. All right, this reference point for absolute URL. Yeah. For relative URL, it's very easy to understand. If we just use our intuitions, it's pretty easy to understand. But for absolute URLs, you need to have a starting point, right? Yeah. Absolute URL, the starting point is not the current URL location. It's some new starting place. So that part is a little hard to understand. Redirect, the server root, the root absolute. So when you talk about the root, it points to the server root. That is the domain name. Okay? Domain name you treat as the root. So what is the root? Because your absolute URL, you need to start with the slash, right? We know slash means the root. If you use that slash, what is the explicit location for that slash? Domain name, okay? Slash corresponds to domain name, all right? Yeah. Domain name, yeah, when I say domain name, www.mydomain.com, for example, okay? Yeah. That means not including your web app context root. Your web app has a context root, right? The folder name, right? Default context root. Yeah. Usually, in order to access your web app, you need to type that context root. Okay. Yeah. But here, the slash, it does not include that web app context root part. Think about this behavior. Think about this behavior. All right. Yeah. Later, I will show you an example. Yeah. So this property later, I will get to this special property another time when I show you a concrete example. Okay? Yeah. At that time, I will come back and explain another time. Yeah. Forward, the context root of the web application. So the context, the forward means the root absolute URL. When you use the double quote, this slash symbol root, you mean the context root of the web application. Okay? Yeah. So the context root is automatically included. Okay, see, yeah, here. Including your web app context root. See that difference? This time, that slash means you already include web app context root. All right. The redirect way, you do not include. You start from that domain name. That's big difference. Think about that. That big difference. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Reference point for relative URL. This part is easy. That's because it matches our intuition. We do not need to, pay attention to some surprising properties. No, yeah, just by your intuition, yeah, that's enough for this understanding. Relative URLs. Redirect and forward the current URL of the server or JSP that started. Yeah, because when you do redirect or forward action, you must be in somewhere in a server or JSP, right? You are in some server or JSP. That server and JSP, it has its own URL, right? That location is your default location for relative URL. Okay, yeah. So for this part, they're both the same. Relative, that means you do not start with that slash. Okay, you just specify some past things starting from the current location. Here today I give you some abstract. Yeah, because although I upload one example request, forward request, that example, but today I do not have time to run that. I do not have that time to run that. Okay, yeah. So our discussion pretty much abstract discussion. Although you have all the points, abstract discussion. Yeah. But we may need to use concrete examples, a few more concrete examples, we can understand this pair of concepts better. Okay, all right. Yeah, so let me do in this way next time. In my Wednesday lecture, at the beginning, I may run some simple examples. Let me use about 15 minutes to run some simple examples related to redirect and forward. And I also explain, use those examples. You can see clearly from those examples, so you can get a, not abstract understanding, okay, some concrete understanding. Yeah, next time. All right, so let me stop here. With this background, then you can work on those 5 or 6 questions in our homework assignment number 1. Okay, yeah. Yeah.